All right, we're in Genesis 35 today, so sticking around with this. I thought we were going to have a little bit more of a continuation of a wrap-up of that last chapter with the story of Simeon and Levi destroying the whole city, basically tricking them to be circumcised. But it looks like we don't have that continuation. I thought it would continue a little bit more, but it doesn't. So we kind of have a break in what's going on here in chapter 35. But we learn here God sends Jacob to Bethel, where he builds an altar, and the Lord appears to him. God renews the promise that Jacob will be a great nation and that his name will be Israel. Jacob sets up an altar and pours a drink offering. Rachel bears Benjamin, dies in childbirth, and is buried near Bethlehem. Reuben sins with Bilhah. Isaac dies and is buried by Jacob and Esau. So a little bit more of the saga of this family known as the children of Israel and how things are going on here. So verse 1, and God said unto Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel, where he's been before, remember, and dwell there, and make there an altar unto God that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. So remember when he fled Esau several chapters ago, he built an altar and he saw God, and then talked with God, basically, and got those blessings. And so now we're leaving this area. We're moving up to Bethel, basically, because God has instructed us to do this. So verse 2, then Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with him, put away the strange gods that are among you and be clean and change your garments. So he's telling the people, because obviously there was some idol worship that was going on. They had idols. You remember even Laban's idols had been stolen and brought with them. And remember, he had to get those back. And there's still idols among you. And he says, you need to be better. God is expecting better of us. So get rid of the idols, clean up your garments, be nicer, be neater. Let's be better, more like more like God wants us to be, basically. And let us arise, this is verse 3, and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went. Verse 4, and they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. That's that city, remember, that was just wiped out by Simeon and Levi. So he left all the stuff there, the idol worships and things like that, put it all there, and they journeyed, verse 5, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So it sounds like there was the word of what happened in Shechem spread, but everybody was afraid of dealing with Jacob and his group, even though Jacob and his group weren't big. From what it sounds like, they probably went, holy cow, they wiped out this whole city. We're not going to mess with them. There's, God is with them, kind of a thing. Verse 6, so Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan. Luz is in the Bible dictionary. That is Bethel, and he and all the people that were with him. And he built there an altar and called the place El Bethel, because there God appeared unto him when he fled from the face of his brother. So he got to that same place again, built an altar. Maybe his other altar had been destroyed, so he rebuilt it. Verse 8, but Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak, and the name of it was called Alon Bakuth. So Deborah is actually in the Bible dictionary. You can look her up to learn a little bit more, meaning that Alon Bakuth means oak of weeping. So it was a sad day that Deborah had passed away. Verse 9, and God appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Paddan Aram and blessed him. So when he came out of that area, he meets God again, basically. In verse 10, and God said unto him, thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel, which is in the Bible dictionary. So this is when Jacob gets his name changed. Remember, he built that altar saying the El is the God of Israel before he went into Shechem, when he was over in that area. But now his name is changed to Israel, basically. And verse 11, and God said unto him, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply, and a nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins. And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. and God went up from him in the place where he talked with him. So he has this vision, renews the covenant that Abraham and Isaac got, basically. So that covenant is being renewed again. I'm sure Jacob was a little worried about this because of that journey, and worried that the other cities are going to attack him, worried that Simeon and Levi had messed it up to where he couldn't get those renewals. So now God is telling him, no, I'm going to renew this with you again. Let's move forward. Basically, let's move forward from this. We don't hear like a forgiveness necessarily, but let's move forward from this. All right, so verse 14, and Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering thereon and poured oil thereon. So that's doing an offering, basically, sacrifice. Verse 15, and Jacob called the name of the place where God spake with him Bethel, which it was before. Verse 16, and they journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little way to come to Ephrath. And Rachel travailed, and she had hard labor. So remember, when God met with him, he told Jacob, be fruitful and multiply. Now, you got to realize he already has 11 sons and a daughter. And God's telling him, have more kids, basically. So he decides to have more kids. So he goes with Rachel, and Rachel has another baby. But this delivery was a hard one on Rachel. Verse 17, and it came to pass when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, fear not, thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass, as her soul was departing, for she died, that she called his name Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. Okay, you can look those up in the Bible dictionary too. Ben-Oni meaning, or Benjamin meaning son at the right. Ben-Oni means son of my sorrow or distress. So she died in childbirth, basically, giving birth to Benjamin. Rachel died. So Benjamin is now born, a little baby. So we learn in verse 19, and Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrath, okay, which is Bethlehem. So this is really an important point here to understand this, because if we remember right, if we look up here, let's see, where did it go? Ephrath was mentioned again. I'm just trying to remember. I was going to talk about the history of that. But anyways, the place where she was buried was called Bethlehem, basically. This is a suburb of Jerusalem, okay, which is where the great king of Salem ruled, which was Melchizedek. So, and remember that Bethlehem is kind of a suburb outside the city a little ways. But Bethlehem does exist, and so Rachel is buried in Bethlehem. Verse 20, and Jacob set a pillar upon her grave, that is the pillar of Rachel's grave unto this day. So for a long time, I don't know what happened to that pillar or where it is, but they built a pillar of stones, almost like an altar, and that's to mark her grave. And it sounds like it wasn't messed with for a long time. And to realize this is most likely Moses who's writing this down. He's taken the children of Israel out of Egypt. He has done those, he's done those things, and now as they're wandering through the wilderness and doing this stuff, he's compiling all the records together, getting all this done, and he's saying that it's still there, basically. So hundreds and hundreds of years later, it's still there. Verse 21, and Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the tower of Edar, which is interesting. The tower actually has a lot of footnotes to it that actually refer to Book of Mormon time. So there's towers in the Book of Mormon that were built to give great speeches, to talk and lecture. So that's probably what this tower was as well, a place where they could, like the king or a priest, could get up there to administer to the people. So that's where he is at, basically. Now, verse 22, and it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben, he was the first, if I remember, he was the oldest of all the tribes of Israel, went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And Israel heard it. Now, the sons of Jacob were 12. So we're going to go through the family history really quick. So the sons of Leah was Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon and Levi. So remember, Simeon and Levi have committed a whole lot of atrocities with murders and lies and deceits. And then Judah was her fourth, and Issachar and Zebulun. Those are so six, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sons from Leah. So, and she had Dinah as well. So she had 7 children. Then the sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, were Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him in Paddan Aram. So this is, realize this isn't necessarily in order, because Rachel's 2 children were born after Bilhah and Zilpah's children were born. Joseph and Rachel, or Joseph and Benjamin, excuse me, Rachel's sons are sons number 11 and 12 in the line, basically, as far as age. But realize Reuben, who's the oldest of Leah, basically went in and had sex with Rachel's handmaid, Bilhah. And so that's not a good thing. So now we hear in here, verse 27, and Jacob came unto Isaac, his father, now we don't hear what happened from that, basically, unfortunately, but I'm sure Reuben was reprimanded for what he did. Why he did it, we don't know. We don't know what happened with that. Maybe, I don't know, because you got to realize Bilhah and Reuben are, Bilhah is Reuben's stepmom, basically. So she's much older than him. Most, obviously, because by the time Bilhah was old enough to even be a wife of Jacob, at least, even if she was in teenage years, she would have been a teenager at minimum when Reuben was born. So there's probably 15 to 20 year difference at least between them. So now we get into verse 27. The story changes. This is one of the challenges, is they tell the story and then they just stop telling the rest of the story. That's welcome to ancient scriptures and ancient writings. Verse 27, and Jacob came unto Isaac his father unto Mamre, unto the city of Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac sojourned, and the days of Isaac were 104 score years. So Jacob has now kind of come back around where Isaac was, and he has brought his family back up there. Remember, this is where a lot of what most of his sons were born in this place, Paddan Aram, but that's where Laban was, and so they went back over that way for a while, and now they're coming back over to Jacob because or Isaac, excuse me, because Isaac is dying, so he passes away basically. And Isaac gave up the ghost and died and was gathered unto his people, being old and full of days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. So now Esau and Jacob are back together. See, again, we don't hear the full story of Jacob going all the way to meet with Esau, and then leaving from there. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't make it there, but now they come together again, and they bury their father, basically. And so we get the end of Isaac, and now Jacob and his sons are still active in doing things. And so we're getting into more of those stories, continuing on to that next generation of the family, basically. So we'll see in the next chapter.